So thank you all very much for joining for our last session of this IDTX event and the last IDTX event of the year as well. With us obviously is Joe Cook, who's going to take over from me in just a moment. I'm very aware you're not here to listen to me, but I just need to say, first of all, obviously thank you to Joe and thank you to all of you for being here, but also to all of the speakers today who have been fantastic, and our event sponsors, Evolve L&D, L&D Free Spirits and Little Man Project, who have made this event possible. Do check out all the recordings of these after the fact, which will be up within the next 24 hours. But without further ado, I'm going to shut up, get out of the way, and hand over the reins to Joe. Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Tom. And also we have to say a huge thank you to Tom for organising this too. So he always says thank you to everybody else, but I want to say thank you to Tom on behalf of everyone here. And as Jane said in the chat, well done, Tom. It's been fab and lots of lovely stuff coming through for you as well. Well, hello and welcome to my session all about the ultimate design tactic that's going to elevate your training to the next level. Why on earth should you listen to me? Great question. I've no idea. I've been in L&D for more than 25 years now, heading towards 30, which is a scary number. I have been working in live online learning or virtual learning since 2013, way before the pandemic. I've also worked in further and higher education. I've worked with large companies such as CNN News and Bupa International, as well as charities and much smaller companies. And I'm on my own these days as well. So hopefully a whole slew of things that I can refer to with you, but also I want you to get involved in chat. You can put your webcam on if you want to. It would be lovely to see you, but you don't have to if you don't want to. What I'm going to cover in this half an hour is we're going to have a look at what your approach is to this ultimate design tactic. We're going to talk about what I think my one is. We're going to discuss why it's important and how to do it. And I promise to leave time for Q&A, but you can always drop those into the chat as we go. So first of all, this session is all about the ultimate design tactic to elevate your training to the next level. But what might your ultimate design tactic be? I'm going to throw it straight out to you first of all. So let's use that chat window. If you haven't seen it, it should be at the bottom of your screen. Might look like a text message box. Click on that, please, and you should open up a new chat window. If you're having trouble with that, there is a hand up icon. We can get you unmuted. More than happy to have a conversation with you. So if you'd like to use the chat, you can. You can click the hand up if you'd like to unmute. What might your ultimate design tactic be? So we're here to know about what this is. I've got my one to share with you, but what might yours be? And if you don't have a camera or a webcam today, absolutely no problem. Okay, some interesting stuff coming through on the chat. We have Kim saying, know your audience. Kim, I love that. So important. I was actually on a scoping call today, or actually maybe a pre-scoping call. And one of the key things we were saying is we want to be able to speak to the audience. We want to know what they think their competence and confidence is. We want to be able to work with their managers to know what the missing gaps are and so on. So without knowing some of that stuff, how do I pitch the content? How do I pitch the activities at the right level? So that's a really good one. Ray, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, has said design for the minority. Ray, I would love you to share a bit more about that in chat, or if you want to come on audio, you're more than welcome to tell us a little bit more about that. So Ray, tell us A, if I've got your name right, and B, what designing for the minority means.
Yeah, hi Joe. Perfect pronunciation, by the way, you got it. So essentially what I mean by that is just making sure that I'm always considering the nuance case for the end user. So whoever's going to be working with us, making sure that I'm making accessibility choices that will include everyone, not just my general target audience of people, but for those nuanced cases of people that are coming in, are they going to A, understand the content that I'm putting forward, and B, of course, are they actually going to access it correctly?
I love that, Ray. Thank you so much. So it's about, general accessibility is important, but it's thinking about those outliers, thinking, well, will this work on somebody's mobile phone if they have no signal? Will this work if somebody has a particular neurodivergent trait? And how can we work with that? So some really great things to consider there, Ray. Thank you. Mary says to include delegate participation too. Loving that. And I think that participation element is really, really important in terms of having a learning experience. Tom says paper prototyping. Tom, I have to ask you to unmute. What's paper prototyping, and tell us all about it.
So it's really, it's a way of doing incredibly low fidelity prototypes of whatever you're thinking and putting them in front of users and saying, what's wrong with this? Very early on, but not waiting till you've got something in Review 360 or whatever. So it could be scribbles on paper, it could be Twine, it could be Figma, whatever you use to do those kind of initial sketches. But just doing it early really is the key.
Fantastic. Thank you. A minimum viable product MVP is another way you might describe that. So it's about just saying, hey, here's some information, give me some feedback, give me some direction, tell me something that maybe I have made an assumption and I didn't realize I'd made that assumption and I'm going completely off track. So that would give you that kind of feedback. Love that share, Tom. Thank you. Lara says, reduce how much content there is. Lara, I'm with you. When I write my 2-hour sessions and I've got 3 hours worth of content, it's like slash. Really important to be good at editing your own content and cutting your favorite activity, dumping your favorite story into a handout somewhere. It can be brutal, but it's absolutely worth it. John says walk in your learner's shoes. There's all sorts of different ways to doing that. And John, perhaps you can share in chat how you do. That could be sitting with them at their desk. It could be doing their job with them, shadowing them. It could just be trying to use the system or the process that they're using. It could be interviews, all sorts of different things. Jane's definitely agreeing with the accessibility, and Emily says, I took user personas and empathy maps from a UX or user design course and have started applying them when designing learning to keep the learner in mind. Love that point, because that helps with the kind of, well, what if they're in this job or that role, or think this way, or whatever it might be. And John says simply getting access to some actual learners is a good first step. Yes, John, absolutely appreciate that can be challenging. Okay, so you've all shared some really great things. I just wanted to share a little kind of bit of information from a research report I did, which is a couple of years ago now, but this was from a Virtual Research Insight. So it was particularly about virtual and hybrid. But the thing I asked here was what enhances your virtual experience? This was to learners themselves, to participants. And these were the top 3 answers. The things that made a good training session was, guess what? The facilitator. Was, guess what? A well-designed session and the opportunity to interact. Now, that is the same whether, in my opinion, whether it's facilitated virtually or whether it's facilitated face-to-face. All of those things are relevant. So it's really, really important that we follow that. Now, the thing that I've got, my ultimate design tactic that I'm sharing with you, is something called the 3 to 5 minute rule. Have you heard of that before? Type a yes or a no in chat to let me know, or give some kind of little heart. So Kim is giving me a heart. Thank you for that. So it's entirely up to you. You can use an emoji, emoticon response. Oh, loads of you have heard of it. Some of you might not, which is absolutely fine. I actually don't call it the 3 to 5 minute rule. I don't like that idea. I call it a recommendation instead, because you can use it, you don't have to use it, you can change things up. What on earth is this 3 to 5 minute recommendation? It's all about when you are designing your learning, and I'm talking classroom training, virtual training rather than e-learning, that you have a planned interaction for the whole group every 3 to 5 minutes. And this is really handy, that when you're writing things down, whether it's a lesson plan, a script, anything like that, that you plan in and kind of go, I've got 5 or 6 minutes worth of delivery here. I would have been talking all this time. It's about time I asked a chat question or an emoji response, or maybe did a poll, anything like that. The whole idea is to get people involved, and therefore you are making sure you're connecting with your learners. So let's look into why this might be so important. Think of yourself right now, where you are today, sat at a computer or a tablet somewhere. You are attending either just this session, or you've attended some of the other great sessions today at IDTX. In chat, please let me know, why is interaction so important to you in the participant hot seat like you are right now? What do you think? So some of you didn't know the 3 to 5 minute rule. Some of you do now. Well, you all do now. But why is it that interaction is important to you right now, on this session, throughout today, and so on? Kim says it keeps me engaged. Absolutely it does, hopefully. Natalie says, I like learning for everybody else. Oh, that's interesting. So that could be sharing back to a team or something like that, or it could be kind of within the group, or you learning something makes somebody else go, oh, yeah, interesting point. Christina says it keeps you actively engaged. Absolutely. And Kim added, it stops me multitasking. We all know we can't multitask. Not really. You can walk and chew gum, but in terms of like listening to me and thinking about what we're doing and typing something in chat and maybe going through your emails, your brain process can't multitask in that way. John says it forces us to engage our brains. Yes, John, absolutely it does. Mary says the brain can wander easily, otherwise it can. There are so many of those distractions. Laura says it mentally keeps me in the room, hopefully. Emily says, if I'm taking time out of the day, I want to be included in the experience. I love that, Emily. So often we have people in our training sessions, face-to-face or virtual, and we kind of don't respect the fact that they've given up an hour or 2 hours or a day. And it's just like, well, how much of what we've just said, going back to the content point, could have been sent in an email, a PDF, a pre-read, homework, a resource? Use the live time for what you want to do. Neil says it keeps my focus. Lovely. Tom says it helps me contextualize this experience, which is really good. Jane feels involved. Lovely. Ray loves to see other people's opinions. Nothing keeps me engaged more. That's a fantastic point about social learning. And Noella says it allows learning to happen within brain breaks. So not everything I say is going to resonate with you. And what I think a key point I share with you might not be the key point you take away from today. So that's all really important. And also Christina says it boosts brain community, which boosts community, not brain community, community, and maybe brain community. I think you're all absolutely right. And there's some really important stuff here about how we interact and why we interact with each other. Firstly, it's really important because it's all about the experience of learning. We know that delivering just a lecture, whilst it can be interesting, it can be fun, it can be useful, it can be great, isn't necessarily engaging all of our parts of our brain, all of the parts of our empathy and our emotive experience. It doesn't necessarily help with what John was talking about earlier on today, for example, about how our brain is filtering and storing and saving information to recall it later. And to that point, if I ask you a question and you think about the answer and you share it, you are much more likely to remember that. So at Christmas, my family and I, we tend to play Trivial Pursuit quite a lot. And we've been playing it so much that, quite frankly, we're getting some of the same questions again and again. So I had a question last Christmas. I thought, I know, I had this question last year. The answer is absolutely this. And I was completely wrong. Of course, it wasn't that. That was the same wrong answer I gave last year. The reason being, I'd thought so much about the answer that I'd come up with. And then when I was told, oh no, the correct answer is this, I went, oh, okay. I didn't put any thought into that. So therefore, I didn't remember. As we've said, it's about the social learning. So you're going to learn from each other as much, if not more, as you're going to learn from me. You also learn from other people's comments, their examples, the things they share. You learn from their questions. We've all been at the end of a session where we say, any questions? And you're like, no, I'm all good. And then somebody asks a question, you go, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, if I'd thought of that question, I would have loved to ask that. The very last thing, oh, is there not a last thing on my list? There was supposed to be a last thing. Maybe there isn't a last thing. I'm getting ahead of myself. The important thing we have to do here is not have activities just for the sake of it. We all hate those things, whether it's icebreakers or anything else, just in there because we think, oh, I need to include something. So that 3 to 5 minute recommendation, if you're going, oh, I've been talking for 3 minutes, I'll put a question in, what's your favorite color? If you're not talking about color, it is not relevant. Likewise, if you are using the same tech over and over again, or the same interaction method over and over again, that's not going to be very good either. So even here today, we've got chat, we've got hands up, we've got different things, face to face, you've got flip charts, you've got so many different things that you can use. So even if you're very limited, it's about being creative within that and having those meaningful activities. So let's switch gears now, and I'd like you to think about this from the point of view of yourself as a trainer, as a facilitator. Why is it that you want people involved in the sessions? Why do you want people to answer your questions, to do the activities that you ask? So what do you think? Pop them in chat. If you're asking a question in your session, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, if you're running an activity, why do you want people engaged? Why do you want them to answer? Use the chat if you would. If for some reason that's not working, you can always click your hand up icon. That's fine too. Some great answers again. Emily says real-time feedback and engagement. Absolutely, Emily. It's the real-time bit. It's the kind of, what are they thinking right now? What questions are there right now? Personally, I don't know about you, I really hate it when you're at a session, maybe a webinar, a presentation, and they say, we're going to hold questions for the end. It's like, but my question is now 3 minutes in, and unless you answer that question, maybe the rest of it won't make sense. As Tom said, this could be about contextualizing the learning. And if I've missed something right at the beginning, then how am I going to catch up? How am I going to be able to pay attention? We've got loads of other great answers as well. Kim says, it helps us to check the learners are still with us and get what we're talking about. Absolutely. One of the things I find challenging with any kind of learning, and virtual learning has got an extra layer where we're not with each other, is that actually we're relying on interpreting what people tell us through their body language. And I bet you've all had moments where you've looked at someone and thought, they aren't getting it, I'm losing them, they don't like me, something kind of more on the negative side. But when you've spoken to them, they'll be like, oh, no, I'm fine. I was just concentrating. I bet you've all had that. And that's because, our observation of body language is really important, but it's not the whole story. So that's why that feedback is so important. Thank you, Kim. John adds to that and says it's checking their understanding. Absolutely. Christina says so we can understand their experiences and perspectives and how training relates to them. Yes. One of my other pet phrases that I hate people saying is, I don't know if you do this, or I don't know if you know about this. Like, if you don't know, why don't you ask me? That would be a really nice thing to do. And Mary says it assesses their capability. So you may be able to speed up or slow down to match them. Yes, because things like, even like this kind of question, if most people had gone, so they're there, that would have given me a very different kind of response and audience and understanding of you all, rather than the richness that you're sharing in these answers. Natalie says, I need time to think, so I get them to answer. Natalie, I love that. And it's perfect for that. I call it batting the energy back to the audience. And if you ever get nervous, if you're ever worried, the key thing to do is go, let me open that to all of you, which looks really good, but actually is a bit like, what do I think? Give my brain time to process. Kim says if it's an activity, then it's better for them to work things out on their own. Yes, those powerful learning experiences, when people get the light bulb moment on their own, rather than me feeding it to them, it's always better. We can address misconceptions, says Christina. Ray says to test my own perceptions and read the room to see if this topic or part of it is landing or if I need to make a shift. Perfect. And as Jane rightly says, we might learn something from them. Absolutely. So if we're the topic kind of so-called expert, we might not learn a topic thing from someone, but what we're likely to learn is how does it work in your organization? How does it work for your work that you do every day? And they're the really important bits to join up us as delivering something that we know versus them doing the kind of work in the everyday. Neil adds that it helps us to understand what people are thinking as you deliver and check they are learning something they can apply later, which after all is kind of the point of our jobs and what we're doing. And time to have a biscuit too. I like that. Maybe not a biscuit, but definitely the thinking time I like. Thank you very much. So this interaction that we want, what we're focusing on partly is, are people still there in some way? And that could be physically in the room, or if you're doing virtually, are they physically still at a device? And the absolute most basic thing you can do is use something in chat, green tick, happy face, whatever it might be. But also it's actually, are they still attending? Are they still paying attention? Are they still with me in terms of what's going on with the session and what we're learning? Are they actually paying attention? Are they thinking? Are they processing this? And as you've all said, it's about tailoring to their needs. That's the main key point and the reason for doing this. It also helps us to read their digital body language. So this could be, or this is especially if we are working live online. So things like, only a few of you have got your webcams on at the moment. No problem. Great for the ones that do. But for those of you that don't, things like what you say in chat and when you say it and how you say it and the emoji and emoticon responses you're using, that's all telling me something about you. Likewise, if you're face-to-face, you might be using something like Slido or Menti. I think John used Slido earlier on in his session, or you might have other kind of similar stuff. And if you're looking at that and thinking, hang on, I've got 20 people in the room and only 10 people have answered on Slido, that gives you information too. So all of this is really important. So I've said that we have this 3 to 5 minute recommendation. That's my ultimate tactic for really elevating our training. But what I'd like to know from you is, how do you do it? So again, let's use chat. If you want to click your hand up, you are more than welcome to. How is it you get people involved? How do you make your sessions interactive? So from a design perspective, literally sitting there with your laptop typing away, or in your classroom when you're delivering something face-to-face, virtual or otherwise, how is it you actually get people involved? What is it that you do? Let's share some ideas. Oh, Gavin, teacher's pet. Gavin says, like you just did, ask an open question. Very good answer, Gavin, because it is all about making sure we have the conversation, that there's thinking to be done, that you share something in your own wording that you want to share. John says, I add a variety of things. I mix it up. And that's really important. And that's why the dreaded learning styles can feel so enticing, because that idea of, well, I've got an auditory activity and a visual activity. So whilst we know there's no empirical evidence for that, we know people have different preferences. We know the brain responds to stimuli in different ways. So things like having images on our work, but as Linnea said, not just for the sake of it, all of those things are really important to bring together what we've been talking about throughout today. Natalie says, a recent webinar, I've used breakout rooms with a question to discuss. Lovely, Natalie. And the reason that's so good is it's not just about us talking all the time. Kim says, it depends on how I'm delivering. If it's virtual, I love getting them to write on screen. Yes, that's good fun. Mary says, polls that encourage chat, comments and reactions, and mostly doing virtual delivery. Also encouraging people to come on screen and share additional thoughts. Brilliant. Emily says, when in a classroom, I do collaborative stations and spend time with each group. Wonderful. Kim says, oh, in a classroom, I'm partial to a laminated activity. It's like bring out the Open University Blue Peter kind of stuff. All good. It can be great to give people the opportunity to contribute and create, says Gavin. Lovely. Lara says, it's definitely the bit I struggle with. I have technical heavy content. I understand, Lara. Probably a conversation to have offline. It's about breaking it down, thinking about where you can ask questions, where you can get people involved, even if it's just where should I click next on the screen, or I'm going to click on button X, you know, what will happen when I do that? It takes a little bit more time in the session, but it's generally worth it. John says, but some learners actually prefer stacks of good quality PowerPoint, so you need to balance things. Absolutely, they do. So this preference and this idea of balance for everyone and designing for the outliers as well is really important, because as John says, more interaction does indeed mean less content because it costs time. I like to think of it as investing time, because what people get out of it in terms of learning and performance and recall is really important. Quiet reflection is also really good, Linnea. Brilliant. So just in terms of things like virtual, there are all sorts of different ways that you can get people involved. Some of those you said, we've got chat, whiteboards, polling. Also, we've got things like chat, hold and send is a good one. It's where you type in chat, everybody uses a green tick or thumb up and then send at the same time, so you're not being influenced by each other. And it can also be, a lot of activities are really good to think about, what would a school activity be? You know, find the missing bit, do a crossword or whatever it might be. It doesn't mean do a childlike activity, but take that spark as a starting point and make it right for yourself. The ultimate thing is get them doing stuff. It's always about get them answering something, get them talking about something rather than us doing it. And actually do this by design in the very first instance. Your lesson plan, session plan, notes, if you start it this way, it will become the interactive session you want. Because if you're involving people, especially when we think about virtual, you are seeing them in a different way. It doesn't have to mean that you can see their physical body language, but it means that you're understanding your attendee, your learner, ultimately your participant in ways that are really important. That is everything I wanted to go through. I do think I've got maybe just a minute or two for any questions, if there are any. Tom, was there anything that sprung to mind for you?
No, I think one question, I guess, just because I'm sure other people have got some, so chuck them in the chat. One question I always throw out when we're talking about this is, we design these interactions, we put a lot of time and effort into choosing which ones we do and when and why and what we're hoping to get back. There's lots of things you can do when it just doesn't work. One of them is panic. Let's be honest, it's not a good option, but it's there. What advice would you give for when an interaction just falls flat?
Okay, so the biggest piece of advice I can give you, two, I think I'm going to go with. One is design it and plan it really well in the first place, including maybe a backup option. So quite often my slides will have a whiteboard slide, but then just a question slide afterwards in case we have to revert to chat. And the other thing is wait. Just wait. Just give them a moment to think what their answer is, think if they want to volunteer to answer, and then move their mouse to the chat window and type, or click hand up, like have a drink, check your notes, check the time, have a deep breath. And usually somebody has done something, even if it's the answer is, I don't know. And I always say, you're welcome to say, I don't know. There's no wrong answer. or to say, I don't get it, can you ask the question again?
Good stuff.
People are saying I'm really bad about rushing. Yeah.
Okay, I see Kim. Make a joke if appropriate.
If appropriate, yeah. Lightness is good.
Yeah. I must admit, I've often fallen back on the, well, that's gone well.
Yeah, and just being open and honest and go, okay, maybe I didn't ask you that correctly. Maybe I didn't check my notes properly. You know, either like, do you not understand the question? And then people might go, yeah, actually. And they go, okay, that's cool. Or if it's, you know, maybe they don't know, because best will in the world, sometimes we don't get the right information about our audience or something like that, and we've misjudged something, we've missed something, we didn't know something.
Brilliant. So we've got a lot of conversation about slides going on as well, which is really positive. Everyone's favorite topic in L&D, slides, either a deep hatred of them or a love of them or whatever it might be. Lovely. Well, I'm gonna wrap us up then. Joe, thank you so much for running this session. It is a fantastic finish to the day. And thank you again to everyone who's attended, whether this is the first session you've come to today, in which case you've missed it. What are you doing? The good news is all the recordings are going to be available for you, so do check them out and feel free to share those recordings as well. I think some of the presenters today have shared some really fantastic insights, and where they're only 30 minutes, they're easy to share and make your colleagues watch and be that bore that goes back and says, no, I've not got a book for you, but here are 6 30-minute videos you need to watch. We will, of course, return next year with more IDTX events, our usual larger ones and some more small ones like this. And if you've got any ideas or would like to get involved, please get in touch. We're always looking for people willing to come and share their experiences, their ideas. You don't have to be a world-renowned expert. You don't need to have a million years experience. I guarantee you, you've got an experience no one else in the world has. And if you would like to share it, I would like to be able to facilitate that for you. So thank you all so much for your time and for your efforts and energy today. Have an amazing rest of the week, and we'll see you again in the future.